This is the MikeDJKelly Podcast. This is the Mike Kelly Podcast.
Mike Kelly.
So here we go. Just changed my t-shirt following an incident in the garden where I was enjoying the sunshine until a passing pigeon ruined it all. Still, let's get on and unleash podcast number 14 of the amazing Shorter Than Short Mike DJ Kelly podcast show, which includes news and stories that others leave well alone.
On this week's podcast.
Coming up, competitions, mental health, richer sounds, radio, telly, the Queen Mum's remote control, plus the man in seat 61, and a whole lot more. It's the end of May, and if you want to get in touch with anything to do with us about the podcast show, please use either of the following to contact us. Email hello@MikeDJKelly.co.uk or on Twitter @MikeKellyDisco.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly Podcast.
What is boring? I'll tell you what is boring. It's the scoring process on the Eurovision Song Contest. What is more likely to make people fall to sleep around midnight on a Saturday evening than crossing from country to country in a very long-winded process to find out what their scores are? Then they have the audacity to say over 200 million people were watching worldwide. How do they know? Is this another one of those guessing statistics? Do they know how many of those people watching had fallen to asleep? So officially, we're not watching.
Is that true?
What do Thomas Schaffenacker, Matt Taylor, Helen Willits, Darren Bett, John Mitchell, Paul Hudson, Alex Bereford and Lucy Vasemi have in common? Yes, they are all weather forecasters who make you feel they are doing you a big favour when they are telling you the next few days are going to be hot and sunny. Yet when the forecast is not for nice weather and it's an unpleasant, stormy, wet and windy forecast, they sort of have this way of presenting it as if it's nothing to do with me attitude.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly Podcast.
I love the fact that the new Slovenian Prime Minister is comedian Marjan Serek, with no great political track record, but he did play the role of the Slovenian Prime Minister in a comedy TV show.
Golly gosh.
Okay, time for our first competition. Let's guess the celebrity. Who is this? Born on the 3rd of June 1950 in Detroit, Michigan. She's a British-based American singer-songwriter, bass guitar player, actor and Radio 2 presenter. Had a recurring role as bass player Leather Tuscadera on the popular American sitcom Happy Days. This person has sold over 50 million albums. Who is she?
This is the Mike Kelly Podcast.
On the radio, stumbled across a station called Union Jack, which is an interesting mix of British music with no presenters but comedy clips and puns, but still has travel news and news bulletins. Bit challenging to remember who all the songs are by, but fun as there is no presenter telling you. Came across the Russ and Jono. Yes, that's them from Virgin Radio first time round, and the Russ and Jono rebooted podcast. Very funny, especially Mystic Smeg. They also play shortened versions of songs to get round paying licence fees, yet if what I read is correct, you still have to pay. Going to their poddy did remind me that people still have a button that says subscribe to get the podcast, even when it's free. It must be putting some people off. Why not a button that says listen instead of subscribe? I'd have to say the best entertainment my ears have come across this week is Desert Island Dicks. Not sure who presents it, but it's 3 and varies in length from episode to episode, and it's on podcasts. It's very funny and sort of the opposite of Desert Island Discs, but without the music. One guest per episode, and the basis of the show is they've ended up on a desert island via a plane crash with one other surviving passenger who is someone they hate. The only food is food they hate, the music, film and book are ones they most hate, and so on. Very entertaining and all for free.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly Podcast.
On the Chase with Bradley Walsh. Is it only me that can see when the chaser is questioned about an answer, they are reading the details from a monitor screen, or can everybody see that they're doing this? Enjoy the weekly updates from Adam Pearson, Kate Quilton and Chef Simon Rimmer as they investigate how consumers can get the best experience when dining out in Tricks of the Restaurant Trade. Great team, and works well as a programme. I think it's on Channel 4. As I'm now listening to podcasts and listening to commercial radio stations and not the BBC, and viewing more programmes on commercial channels rather than the BBC, do I need a licence for my viewing and listening? I don't think so. More on this next time. Yep, it's competition time, but no prizes. What is the song that these lines are from? You used to think that it was so easy. You used to say that it was so easy, but you're trying now, another year, and then you'd be happy. Those lines again. You used to think it was so easy. You used to say that it was so easy, but you're trying now, another year, and then you'd be happy. Name the song or the artiste. Please do get in touch for anything to do with the podcast show. Please use either of the following to contact us. Email hello@MikeDJKelly.co.uk or on Twitter @MikeKellyDisco. And don't forget, in case you missed my tweets about the new versions of the podcast being available, you can always get the Mike DJ Kelly Podcast by going to iTunes or Spotify and searching Mike DJ Kelly.
New for 2019.
It looks like the rollout of the new 5G telecoms network is going to be delayed because to roll it out, the kit to make it work needs to be fitted to the tops of very tall lampposts. But no one has put a UK-wide plan in place with councils to allow such a scheme to go ahead. And at what price per lamppost?
New for 2019.
In my younger days, used to use Richer Sounds a lot, so nice to see in the news that Julian Richer, the owner, is giving the company to his staff. Not only that, they get £1,000 for every year they've worked there, and some of them have been there for a long time. And on electronic things, I'm not sure why, but our first TV remote control came to mind. Remember, this was when I was about 10, so 50 years ago. It was a grey coloured thing with lots of buttons and connected to the TV by a long, thick grey cable. Still, you did not have to walk the 3 yards to the TV to change channels. Which in turn reminds me of a Stephen Fry book I read, which told the tale of the late Queen Mother. True or not, I do not know. The QM had a new TV installed and it was the first one with remote control. So instead of calling the butler to change channels, she could do it herself. On being shown how it works, she said, "I'll just stick to the old system."
This is the Mike Kelly Podcast.
This week's do-gooders are the Cellar Trust. They are a registered mental health charity that supports people with mental health problems across the Bradford district to move forward in their recovery and live independent, fulfilling lives. They exist because mental health problems exist and because they are complex. We all have mental health and our state of health can change at any time. Mental health problems affect everyone in different ways and they can be devastating. Their purpose is to support people when they face these challenges and to empower them to move forward. They help people with mental health challenges, they give people hope, and to help them build brighter futures. 1 in 4 of us will face a mental health problem in any given year, so whether it's you or someone you know, they are here to help. The services are available to people who live in Bradford, Airedale, Wharfdale and Craven. Find out more at the cellartrust.org website. According to recent consumer shows, there are now more product recalls than ever before. One of the biggest recently has been the Vauxhall Zafira, which is on its 3rd recall following vehicle fires. Tesla are just about to release the Tesla Model 3, starting at £39,000 for the cheapest version of this American-made electric car. And that price includes the UK government's grant of 3.5k to reducing the charge to make electric cars more accessible. This basic model can travel up to 245 miles between charges. The more expensive ones can travel further. I see lots of charging points when in London, but when you head north, I don't see so many. Having said that, the Queen's Head pub at Kettlesing in the Sticks near Otley has 3 in its car park. And by the way, the food is great, so search it out. If they're worried about global warming and the impact of fossil fuel burning cars, why do they not introduce a new tax for how many cars per household? Maybe 1 car for 3, second car £100 tax, third car £500 tax.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly Podcast.
Saw a picture of the man in seat 61 on the new LNER Azuma trains, which are supposed to improve the reliability of services and journey times on the East Coast Main Line. My understanding is that the Azuma trains are electric and diesel, so can run on all tracks. But their first delay was the launch, which was many months behind schedule. Why is the man in seat 61? He is Mark Smith, a former station manager, then Strategic Rail Authority and Department of Transport ex-employee. Why seat 61? Zaroff, the notorious arms dealer, would always book compartment 7 on the Orient Express when going to or from Istanbul. On Eurostar, Mark Smith would always request seat 61 in the first-class cars 7, 8, 11 or 12 in the classic Eurostar, as it lines up the window, one of the cosy pair of seats facing each other, across a table complete with table lamp, like an old Pullman car. It became a tradition, and he's left London in seat 61 en route to destinations across the world ever since. Find out more at seat61.com and to book travel and hotels. Final one on travel. Travel Man, 48 Hours in Hamburg. Programme host Richard and guest Bob Mortimer go for a spin around cosmopolitan Hamburg. There's a Beatles tour in the red light district, some local hash, corned beef and hip cocktails. What's not to love about the show? It's out there on YouTube if you want to see it. Oh, I did promise last time that I would tell you about my camping holiday in France at the tender age of 18. Myself and several friends drove to the Biarritz area of the south of France and stayed at a campsite with our large ex-army tent. Lots of booze, food and sunshine, and problems with the neighbours due to my snoring. When we went to sleep, I started snoring and a nearby dog started barking in response, which started many other dogs around the campsite barking. I'm told this happened every time I snored. By the second night, we were surrounded by our complaining camping neighbours, and by the third night, we'd moved to another less populated campsite. If you want to get in touch with this top-rated, much-listened-to podcast, please contact email hello@MikeDJKelly.co.uk or on Twitter @MikeKellyDisco. Indeed, if you want a podcast making for your business or need any help with radio producer or presentation work, please get in touch.
Golly gosh.
Went to the chemist the other day to get my wife's pre-arranged prescription. On approaching the counter, I was told I'd have to wait as the pharmacist was out at lunch and I could not have my prescription until he returned. When he returned 10 minutes later, the assembled group of customers were dispatched with prescriptions. The puzzling thing is that the pharmacist was not involved with the dispatching. He'd gone into a side room for his lunch, so it looks like a tick-in-a-box system rather than anything safety related. The other point is that it brought to mind the fact that in days gone by, shops would close for lunch at a preset time so that you would know not to go because they were closed. So Mr. Cohen's chemist, maybe time to close for lunch so we know, or at least a sign saying no prescriptions available between 1 and 1:30.
Is that true?
Okay, time to go. Guest the celeb, born on the 3rd of June 1950 in Detroit, Michigan, had a recurring role as bass player Lever Tuscadera on the popular American sitcom Happy Days. This person has sold over 50 million albums. Yep, with hits like Can the Can, 48th Crash and Devilgate Drive. It's Susie Quattro. So what was the song that contained these lines? You used to think that it was so easy. You used to say that it was so easy. But you're trying now. Another year and then you'd be happy. Jerry Rafferty and Baker Street. That's all we have time for in this edition of the Crazy Shorter Than Short podcast show. From me, Mike Kelly, take care. And remember, you can always find the podcast by searching or shouting Mike DJ Kelly Podcast.
This is the Mike Kelly Podcast.
Mike Kelly.